the new scoreboard.
I obviously wasn't a pitch count guy.
Swing and a miss on a changeup now.
It is a changeup, and it is ridiculous.
I was probably a little goofy, to be honest with you.
Turns, throws, got it! What a play! Oh, man!
Have a seat with Jason Benetti and Dan Dickerson. Presented by Figer Law.
And welcome to Have a Seat, presented by Figer Law. We couldn't be happier today to be joined by the Hall of Fame manager. And we can say Hall of Fame manager now because the induction ceremony was just a few days ago. Jim Leyland. Jim, welcome.
Well, thank you. Very, very nice to be on with you guys. I appreciate it very much.
Comerica Park Field's right behind you as we record this at Comerica Park. Do you always get a special feeling walking back in here?
Yeah, I did a little something this morning for season ticket holders, and they asked me my most memorable moment. I guess that had to be Maglio's home run when we won the pennant that year, but it's a very comfortable place for me and a wonderful place for fans to come.
Just got through the Hall of Fame weekend. Wonderful speech. I loved your speech. You've been working on it, you said, for a while, and you really couldn't enjoy the weekend until you were past that.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. You got all the Hall of Famers sitting behind you, and they don't want you to talk too long. and then you got 20, 30,000 fans out in front of you, and they probably don't want you to talk too long either. They probably want to get to the players, which managers are kind of a tag-along for that type of a situation, but it was great. And once I got through the speech, then I really relaxed and had a great time.
Sunday is the night that everybody talks about after the ceremony's over and you just get to hang out at the hotel with all the Hall of Famers. Yeah,
it was wonderful. We had a dinner with just the Hall of Fame guys, and then the wives had a dinner with the Hall of Fame wives, and then afterwards it was almost like a picnic atmosphere to watch fireworks, and they had drinks, and we overlooked the lake there. It was absolutely gorgeous. It's a gorgeous scenario. It really is. But it's a very tough place to get, and it's a very special place.
Who did you find yourself talking to that night?
I talked to Johnny Bench a lot because Johnny Bench called me after I got in 2 or 3 times. And this was the thing, Jason, I was nervous about. Like I said, being a manager, you're kind of tagging along. So I kind of walked softly. I wanted to get a feel for the room and the players. I wasn't sure how they would treat a manager, especially with my pedigree not being a major league player and everything. I was conscientious about that. But Johnny Bench relaxed me. He called me a few times and said, listen, you belong there. We can't wait to see you there. And so he really made me feel comfortable. And I spent a lot of time talking to him during the whole weekend.
What are your conversations like with Johnny Bench?
Well, this is funny. I told Johnny Bench I blamed him for ruining my career. And he said, how is that? I said, well, when he played at Peninsula in the Carolina League in 1966, I was playing in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And I told Johnny, I said, when I saw you play, I said to myself, if that's what they look like, I got no chance whatsoever. So we laughed about that. We talked about the old times, and Johnny was absolutely fantastic. But all the Hall of Famers were great. They were really good.
How would you compare how you walked into that room the first minute you were in there to the first time you walked into a clubhouse as a manager in A-ball?
Well, that's a great question. I think you walked in, the first time you walked in a clubhouse as a manager in A-ball, you knew you had something to prove, and you were going to try to earn your stripes. And when you walk in the Hall of Fame room, right or wrong, whether I did or not, you felt like you earned some stripes. So that was the difference.
Your first manager job was at 26.
That means you're not a very good player.
But you'd been in the Tigers minor league for 8 years. You were a good athlete, or whatever you want to say about your minor league career. You were a good athlete growing up in Perisburg, Ohio. And you described in your speech Perisburg, Ohio, as a jewel of a town in northwest Ohio. What was it that made it like the perfect place to grow up for you to develop your love of baseball, sports, and music?
It's so different than today's world, to be honest with you. The town was 1 square mile. There was 5,500 people. I think it was actually called a village at the time, not even a city. It's big now. But, we played on our neighbors' lawns. We played out in the back. If somebody had a bigger lot, then we played on that. We played baseball all the time. I mean, you leave the house in the morning, and I know people, the younger people don't want to hear these old stories, but, you went out at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you didn't come back till almost dark. And you might play baseball for quite a while, and then you might go to the swimming pool, the little swimming pool they had, and hang out with your buddies. And you did that most every day in the summertime. And that's what you did. I can remember when I was playing, I played for 2 or 3 different teams, and I'd actually have one shirt over top of the other and then take it off and go play for another team, you know? And that's just the way it was in those days. I'm not saying it was better than now or worse than now, but that's just the way it was.
You loved baseball from when you were just as young as you can remember.
I did. I loved the game of baseball. I really enjoyed it. I always enjoyed competition. I was a 3-sport guy in high school, but kind of a big frog in a little pond. It was a small area. The competition wasn't near what some of these kids play in today, you know. So, and I thought that was really healthy to play different sports. I really thought that was important, to get your body moving differently for different sports, for coordination and competition and everything. And today it's a little rougher on kids, not rougher, but you know, they want you football 12 months a year. They want you lifting weights all winter. They want you doing something all the time for just that sport. And I think it's good, and it's none of my business what people do, but I think it's good for the younger kids to play multiple sports.
Yeah, I think that's still true today.
I believe
you're
that,
right.
too.
A lot of them get specialized in 12 months a year.
I think so too.
Those will tell you. What was your second favorite sport?
Football. I love football, and I got to be honest, I was a Cleveland Browns fan and a Cleveland Indian fan growing up. And some of my brothers, I came from a big family, 5 boys and 2 girls, and they were Tiger fans, but I was a Cleveland fan. And I was 10 years old when they won 54 with Al Rosen and all that group. So, and I was a Cleveland Browns fan, you know, Marion Motley and Otto Graham, and that's just the way it was. But I'm a front runner, so I'm rooting for the Lions now.
What did you like most about football when you were playing it?
I just loved the chance that you got to get hit and hit somebody legally. You know, I loved that. I thought it was great. You know, you could take some frustration out, clean and hard, but it was good, and you knew that you were going to get it, and it was a lesson for you. Were you tough enough? You know, could you stand some good times and bad times? That's all important when you're playing any kind of sport.
What lessons like that did you, like on the football field as a kid, do you have any memories of like somebody hitting you pretty good or like big moments?
Yeah, I do. I got hit several times pretty good, and I respected the opposition because it was clean and hard. It was good competition. My high school football coach actually went on. He was a running back coach for the New York Jets the year they upset the favorites in the Super Bowl. Yeah, so he was very good, and he was a disciplinarian. He taught me a lot about handling people. He was very good at handling people, and that's what our business is as managers. It's handling people, handling different personalities, and and coming from a big family. My father was one of 16.
Wow.
15 aunts and uncles, and it was very interesting. And people think, oh, you're just talking, but I'm not. It was very interesting to see all those different personalities of my aunts and uncles. Some of them were friendlier than others. Some of them were kind of shy. Some of them would get on you. And it was very interesting to see those different personalities, and it actually helped me in my managerial career later on.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I mean, I love the quotes from other managers. Tony La Russa says, of all the great ones in your era, you were the most complete manager. You stood above all others because you were the most complete manager. Terry Francona said, you're the gold standard, because there's so much that goes into being a good manager. It's obviously the baseball knowledge and that ability to evaluate. But to get the most out of a player, you have to be able to connect with players.
Yeah,
and
you
it seemed
do.
like you did. Was that your right from the start? Is that how you felt like you had to be if you were going to be a good manager?
You know, I don't want to sound corny, but I really believed this. And this is the way I managed. I thought I had to be the boss on the field, and I knew that. But I also wanted to be the father figure if they needed it, the brother figure if they needed it, and the friend figure if they needed it. Those things are all important when guys are playing this grueling of a schedule. And, I hate to bring this up, but their kids get sick once in a while, too. There's other problems that go on with these guys. I know the money's great, the fame's great, and all this stuff, but they're human beings, and they have the same issues that a lot of other people do. So I wanted to make sure I was there for them if they needed something beyond baseball, And I always tried to keep my players loose but attentive. And I can remember Todd Helton, I'll tell you this real quick. Todd Helton told a story at the round table in the Hall of Fame when they were asked, well, I want to tell you a Jim story when I was managing the Rockies that one year. He was on the on-deck circle one day, and he was really struggling, couldn't get a hit. And I said, Todd, I was on the stop of the dugout, and he's looking at me, and he's loosening up to get ready to hit. I said, Todd, come here. So he walks over, real serious, and And I said to him, whispered to him so nobody else, I said, "Did you start on your high school team?" and he got a hit. And he was telling that story how he just loosened him up, you know. But every once in a while, you got to be a little creative, you know. That's just the way it is.
Well, were you always like back to 1971? Were you always like that? Did you always know how to like loosen people up?
No, I think you learned, Jason, over the years. I do. I think you learned. I mean, when you come from a big family, there's some type of a personality there, whether it's good or bad. There is some type of personality there, and you have that personality with all your brothers and sisters.
Where were you among the seven?
I was probably in the middle, probably a little bit more of a troublemaker than the other four brothers.
You don't say.
Yeah, and two older sisters, both nurses. So it was good. My dad was a factory worker. He worked 4 to midnight, midnight to 8, 8 to 4. I get it. I mean, you have to know who you are, and I think that's important. And I think that's important when you manage to let the players see the human side of you. I think that's really important.
Well, we saw it in your speech. The moment when you asked Gan Lamont to stand up, it's so clear that there's such a bond there. Why did you feel the need to do that? What did he mean to you?
Well, Gene was the #1 pick of the Detroit Tigers in the first draft in 1965. And we kid about this always because Johnny was there. He was drafted ahead of Johnny Bench, and the rest is history. But he did
I'm
hit a
sure
home.
he's never heard that.
But he did hit a home run in his first at bat.
That's right.
But Gene and I went back to 1966. We were roommates in 1966. We played on the same team. We became very, very, very good friends. Gene went on to manage in the minors like I did. He managed 8 years in the Royal organization, and I managed 11 years in the Tiger organization. And I'll be honest with you, we had a deal. Whichever one got their first shot, we were taking the other one as a coach. Gan Lamont's one of the best baseball minds I've ever been around. Not flamboyant, not out there with the media so much, where, the personality maybe people didn't think was as good as it really is. He really got shortchanged. Gan Lamont was really good. And I just felt that he was so much a part of that, I thought that I needed to recognize him at the Hall of Fame. He deserved that.
It was a beautiful moment.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And Gan Lamont was a loyal member of your staff here. And, I mean, I think of the time in Chicago. You're coming up as a manager at a time when that's how you got to the major leagues, by managing in the minor leagues. And most of those years were at A-ball before you got to AAA for a couple of years and then joined Tony La Russa's staff. Did not get any job with the Tigers at the major league level. Was that always something that you kind of like, I've devoted so much of my time, almost 20 years at that point, to this organization? Was there some frustration there? And then how big was it when Tony La Russa hired you in Chicago?
Well, it was never frustrating for me to not get the Tiger job back then because they had Sparky Anderson.
Right.
I mean, he's on that wall out there that I'm going to go on tomorrow. So, I mean, that's pretty good. So that didn't really bother me, except that I loved the Tigers.
Yeah.
I was with them all my life. I was a kid with the Tigers, and now I'm an old man with the Tigers. But I never really thought about it like that. I knew I was going to have to go a different route to probably be a manager. In fact, I can remember the year I got the White Sox job, I was managing for the Tigers in the Instructional League. And I talked to Bill LaJoy and Jim Campbell. I said, if you can even take me as a bullpen catcher, bullpen coach without the pension, I'll stay. But if not, then I finally got to go. I mean, I can't wait forever. And they couldn't do it. And so I moved on. And like I said, the minor leagues was kind of my stepping stone, but the coaching job at Chicago was my springboard to a major league manager's job.
The nights in the Bard's room are kind of legendary. Dave Dombrowski is a 22-year-old assistant to Raleigh Heeman, the general manager. But you guys would sit there, wouldn't you, at the old Comiskey, the old Bard's room, and just after games, sports writers would come in, scouts might come in, and you would sit around and talk baseball, wouldn't you?
We did. And it's a lot how I learned, and I made a lot of mistakes during my manager career, like all managers do. But what I did was I listened a lot, and what I did was I took what I liked and tried to put it into my own personality, and I took what I really didn't believe in from a baseball standpoint and discarded it. But the things that I liked, I listened to a lot of veteran people talk about baseball. I said, that's good. And then I tried to put that into my own personality.
What made you love the Tigers?
Well, it was my first love because they signed me.
Yeah.
And I thought the day they signed me, I thought I'm going to play for the Tigers someday. I didn't have any doubts at all. But I was smart enough to know in my first spring training when I saw all the competition and everything, this isn't going to happen. So, hey, it's a good job. Maybe somebody will take me on their team for a few years in the minor leagues. You get out of the cold in wintertime, you go to spring training, you warm up some pitchers, you make a team as a backup catcher. Not a bad, I was single. I said, this isn't a bad gig. And then fortunately at the end of it, when they obviously told me, which I knew was going to happen, that you got no chance they asked me to be the manager. So I said, yeah, I'll try it. I didn't know how it was. They said, do you think you can manage? I said, I don't know. Never know until you try. But I'd like to give it a try.
If that didn't work somehow, and like we're talking to somebody else on this podcast, what would you have gone and done if you were a bad manager?
That's a great question. I think I probably would have gone back to school, although I wasn't a very good student. I probably would have gone back to school and tried to get a degree where I could coach maybe in high school or something. So I'd have probably been a high school coach or teacher. And I also, believe it or not, I loved you guys' line of work. I would not have minded being a broadcaster, something like that, maybe go to, I don't know what you even call it, radio school, whatever you call it. But because I loved the game, and I thought maybe that would be an avenue I could take to stay close to the game. But I was fortunate that, I could have been one of those thousands guys that was released and never heard from again.
Yeah.
But somebody believed in me and gave me a chance.
You loved it right from the start, didn't you? Managing.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I liked, the Hall of Fame on that last day when we did that round table, they asked me, the last thing you could say to anybody leaving today from the Hall of Fame, what would you say? And I said, I would say that was easy for me. I said, I hope that I'm living proof that somebody like you that's in the minor leagues today might get the opportunity someday if you stick with it, put your heart and soul into it. I hope I'm living proof that it can happen.
Watching you talk about other people makes me emotional. What is it about other people that you value so darn much?
Well, I like people that put their heart and soul in whatever they're going to try to do. Like I said, as a manager, I always felt my job was to get the best version of the player. How good can Lou Whitaker be? And how good could Dan Petrie be when I managed those guys? My job was to get those to be the best player they could be. And a lot of people, Jason, don't understand this. When you manage sometimes, that's cause for some tough conversations with players and even an awkward relationship for a day or two. But if the heart's in the right place on both sides, it always works out. But I knew how hard it was to play the game, and I think it's one of the things that helped me the most as a manager. When my players didn't execute something or get a job done, I could flash back to say, this is what my manager thought when he was watching me play. And I knew how hard it was to play, and that's what I said. That's where the father, the friend, or the brother, that's where all that comes into play.
You never minded the physical mistakes. You would always say that here. I don't mind the physical mistakes.
No, you could care less. They're going to make error. They're human beings.
But if you're not there mentally,
yeah, I mean,
that's when we may have a problem.
It's a very difficult game to play,
Yeah.
And these guys are standing up there swinging at a 100-mile-an-hour fastball night after night. I don't think people will ever. They're better than in my day. These athletes are so good, it's unbelievable. I'm not saying the game's better necessarily. The game doesn't really change, although there's a couple differences in the game now that I think are significant from even my time. But they're so good, it's unbelievable.
I always said that I felt like you tried to say something to a player every day, whether it was just a hello, a joke, whatever it might be, piece of advice. And then I saw a quote from Andy Van Slyke a week or so ago where he said, I think Jim tried to talk to every player every day. You did, didn't you? I mean, it seemed...
Yeah, but not a big conversation.
No.
Just in passing. Hey, everything all right at home? Kids all right? They'd look at you like, is he nuts or what's wrong with him, And I was probably a little goofy, to be honest with you. But, I just thought communication is very important, and communication with players, let them know where they stand. Players get mad at the manager gets mad at the players. It doesn't always run smooth. But, you always, like I said at the Hall of Fame, I wanted to make the clubhouse a fun place to come and a great place to work.
Yeah.
And I believed that. And the players set the tempo for that, but every once in a while somebody that is a notch above that, like my general manager was my boss. Every once in a while, you might have to step in and straighten a few things out, but for the most part, that's their place. I stayed in my office most of the time.
One day you didn't. I was in the clubhouse, just as an example of how you would try to connect with players every day. Fernando Rodney, most people were out in the field, and for some reason I was still in there, and Fernando was still in there. You came walking in with a catalog in your hand and said, "Hey, Fernando." Fernando liked to dress sharp.
Right.
And you're like, "I think you'd look good in this." And it was like a yellow hat
Right.
and a yellow sport coat. And he just smiled. He was a man of a few words, at least when I was around. Yeah. But that was just like a perfect example. He smiled, and I think you gave him the catalog and walked away.
You got to let them know that you're just another human being. You're not some mean old man that's giving them orders. You get it. You understand it.
So I want to know how you lived the game, because Maglio's in the box, right? ALCS, you're standing there watching. What are your neurons doing? I know what fans are doing, but what's going on in your head and your heart in that moment? How fast are you moving?
That's funny you ask that, because a lot of times, and I don't want fans or anybody else to misunderstand this, but a lot of times you don't really get the excitement around you. You know it's there because you're concentrating on your lineup card. In that case, we don't win it now. What do we got for next inning? Who am I going to use here? Am I going to pitch run here? What pitcher am I going to use? So your concentration should be so good that you know all that stuff's there, and you enjoy it a little bit between innings when you have a moment to kind of look around. But when all that stuff is happening, your concentration is so good, you don't really realize it's happening.
Yeah. A.J. Hinch told us the other day, we asked about you in advance of the Hall of Fame, and he said that you'll send him a note, but it's not about a move, it's about a strategy.
Right.
How do you watch the game, and what's something you see that's small that he does that you're like, wow, I like that, I'm going to shoot him a note?
Well, I think A.J. is one of the best I've ever seen with pinch hitters. Now, in fairness, I didn't have to pinch hit that much because I had more regular players. I had more of an everyday lineup. So people are into so much versatility today, which I don't like as much as some people do, having players play all over. And I'm not talking about AJ. I'm talking in general. Mm-hmm. I think the really good teams have a third baseman, a shortstop, a second baseman, a first baseman, a center field, right? I think when teams get really good, and that's what's going to happen here when they get really good, and then you have your couple utility players. But AJ is a master at having a pinch hitter ready. He's really good, much better than I was at that. I can tell you, he's very smart. He doesn't miss a trick. And the thing I like about AJ, he reminds me so much of Tony La Russa when Tony was younger. He never gets caught by surprise, and he manages 9 innings every night. And in one of our rings, the World Series ring for Florida, or from Detroit, the pennant ring, it says inside of it, 9 full innings. And AJ never gets caught surprised. I know things are struggling right now, but he's a brilliant manager, much smarter than I was. Much smarter. It's a different game now. I don't know how you guys see it, but for me, 2 of the biggest changes in baseball since I've stopped managing are pitch usage and the way the managers play their infield. That's changed a lot over the years. They play their infield in much, much more than in the past. And from a pitching perspective, which I know people think I'm old, which I am, but I'm not old school. The analytical stuff on the pitching side, I think, is really good. I don't think it's as prevalent for the hitters. I don't think you can. I just don't believe that. I'll never believe that. Yeah. It's too hard to hit. You can't be thinking of a million things when you go in to hit. But the pitching stuff, if you remember, as you guys do, you've done it for a long time. 3-1, 3-0, 3-2 was normally a fastball years ago, all the time. Now it's a slider, it's a split finger. That's one of the things that's really changed in the game that I see.
You mentioned Gan Lamont as somebody who was underappreciated as a manager. Who were the we heard all the names that you mentioned, and we know the big names with the Tigers. But when you were here, who were the guys that were really underappreciated for what they did for those teams you had?
Well, I thought Bobby Cox was one of the best young managers that I ever saw when I was coaching for the White Sox. I thought we saw Sparky and Earl Weaver, like you're talking about the big guys, but Bobby Cox was really good. And there were some other guys that were really good, like, for instance, the kid at Tampa now, not kid, but the Tampa Cash is really, really good. I know they have a system and they do it. And Francona was brilliant. Francona was a master at getting the most out of his players.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess you can't say he's underrated. He's going to go in the Hall of
Right.
Fame. And Dusty Baker was another one that I never saw one of Dusty's teams that didn't play hard. He got them to play for him, and they played hard for him day after day after day. Those guys, they were very, very smart in their own way. We're all a little bit different, but
What about Tiger players when you were here? Like the underappreciated guys that you had?
I'll tell you, probably I shouldn't say this because I'll get in trouble, but I'll say maybe so it doesn't get me in trouble. But Placido Polanco
Yeah.
was one player that might not have got appreciated the way he should have. This guy, he was like an old shoe. Not real pretty, but very comfortable, you know, and came the same every day. Came to the clubhouse the same every day, 0 for 5, 5 for 5, every single day. I don't think he made an error for a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Got big hit after big hit. And a little guy, I don't think he got, you know, because he wasn't a big power guy, but he was a true baseball player. And he was a guy, and I even talk about this to our organization sometimes if Scott has a conversation. I think one of the most important things, Placido was a perfect example of this. Who am I as a baseball player, and how can I help A.J. Hinch win this game tonight? Because they can't all do the same things. When they say RBIs aren't important, that's not true. RBIs are important. Now, and I don't look for arguments, but I bring up this point. I'll grant you that some RBIs weren't important. You're ahead 10-1, the guy gets a sac fly, okay, but when somebody tells me that if every player got the same amount of chances to drive in runs, they'd all be the same, that's not true. Rafael Belliard was not going to drive in as many runs as Miguel Cabrera. I can promise you that right now. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen.
Poor Rafael Belliard.
Yeah.
today.
Oh, I love Rafi.
That's
One of the
awesome.
best fielders I ever saw, but he couldn't hit me if I ran through there.
But that's one of the, I mean, you talk about you're old, but not old school. I think, first of all, you had the ability to change with the times and understand. I mean, you 35 years your managing career encompassed, but it has to be very satisfying for you because some of the same things, like an RBI guy,
Right.
have stood the test of time in terms of things that are true about winning teams. It has to be satisfying to see the last two World Series managers, guys in their 70s, Dusty Baker and Bruce Bochy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and there's so many bright young people in the game today, and it's different. There's more technology because it's 2024. There's always been technology. And when they talk about the technology stuff and everything, it's interesting, but I said, wait a minute. 40 years ago, the Iron Mike machine was new technology.
Right.
You know, it's 2024. Yeah, there's more stuff now. And there's more information than when I managed, no question. I had everything you needed or everything that was, you know, possible to have.
Yeah.
But there's more stuff now, and some of it's good. Some of it's really good. But I disagree with today's thinking sometimes on you can script a game. I don't believe that. You can plan for a game, but you can't script it.
What are the things that you think have stood the test of time in terms of the elements that make up a winning team?
Well, good players to
Good
start.
players to start.
Good players to start with. You know, listen, we're pretty much all the same. I've managed against all of them. You know, Leyland, LaRussa, Bobby Cox, Earl Weaver, Sparky Anderson. When we had good players, we did pretty good. And when we didn't, we got beat. That's as simple as it is. But I think that you do have to mold that. Like in 2006, I take credit for nothing except for maybe one thing. That was a very talented group of players, but they did not know how to win. They were not on the same page as far as winning when I got here. And I can remember writing them a letter in the winter. I said, listen, I want you to take the field like the New York Yankees. Not with arrogance, not cocky, but I want you to take it with an air of confidence that here's the Detroit Tigers. And I can remember telling them, I'd have meetings with them, hey, I can't wait to go on the road. And people said, what do you mean you can't wait to go on the road? I said, I want the whole world to see this Tiger team. We're good. You know, so you have to do different things to get some positive thinking in their mind from a team perspective. And I think that's so important as a manager. You got to get, you know, you can't do anything until you believe in yourself. It's not going to happen.
Who were the guys in 06 that took that message to heart early?
I think Polanco was one of them. I think quietly Maglio was one of them who didn't say much. Maglio didn't want to be an out front guy. Maglio just wanted to play, let him alone, and I'll do my job. I'll knock in 100, and I'll play right field okay. but he didn't want to be the guy. Placido was very quiet about it, but he was pretty good about it. Verlander, for a young guy, was he was a little nervous yet and all that kind of stuff, but he was pretty. And of course, we had Pudge Rodriguez, and Hall of Fame catcher, and and Carlos Guillen was quietly kind of a leader, but I've never been big on the leader in the clubhouse stuff.
Right.
I like it more when they lead when the umpire says play ball. I don't need a bunch of great guys in the clubhouse. If you get them, that's great. But like I said, there's some stuff that goes on in the clubhouse once in a while. It's tough stuff. You have some arguments, you have some disagreement, but that's okay. I want guys, when the umpire says play ball, I want production. I'll go to dinner with you, but I want, you need to get a double now and then, knock somebody in.
The tough stuff, you can just say it. It's Todd Jones.
Yeah.
That's who we're talking about.
Todd Jones. Oh, yeah. He was a little bit of a nervous Nelly, but he was so good. Strike one all the time, not overpowering, but what a competitor. What a job he did for us. It was unbelievable. I used to remember in the old days, they don't do it anymore, but if they were behind a run or two in the ninth, they'd take a strike. And Todd Jones would throw an 88, 89-mile-an-hour fastball right down the middle, and they'd take it. And then once he got ahead, he'd kind of pick them apart. He was really good and tough. And he had a great personality. He was.
You used the past tense there.
Yeah.
Had a great personality.
Had a great personality.
It's gone now.
Yeah, I see him on there with you now.
R.I.P.
And I watch him. I'm watching you guys talk with him and Petrie a little bit. I watch it.
You
But-
said nervous Justin Verlander. What was that like?
Well, he was a little bit hyper intense. He started the season kind of mad at me because when I got here, I asked Dave Dombrowski, "Are you going to let me take the guys I want to take?" And Dave said, "Well, within reason." So 2 weeks into spring training, I said, "I want to take him and him." It was Joel Zumaya and Justin Verlander. And Dave said, "Oh." He said, "Skip, you don't know what they're going to do." I said, "You're right, I don't, but I know what those guys that got your fanny beat for the last 3 years are going to do. So let's try something different." And to his credit, he let me take him. And Justin, and I told Zumaya much sooner than I told Justin in spring training. So he was on edge the whole time. But, he's a different pitcher now, but he was such a stuff guy then. His stuff was overpowering. And he's actually learned to pitch a little bit better, but he was a great pitcher here. They act like he just became a great pitcher at Houston. He was Rookie of the Year. He won 17 games. He won the Cy Young. He was a great pitcher here.
I think of those 2 Game 5s in Oakland and back-to-back years, a year to the day almost apart, where he goes 17 combined innings,
Yeah.
shutout, 6 hits, in a Game 5 deciding game against the A's.
I obviously wasn't a pitch count guy.
If there were one team in history that you could have managed, that you would have loved to have managed, just watching from a distance, who would that be?
That's a great, great question. Well, I'd have to think about that one. I'd probably say that I'd like to manage the 2013 Detroit Tigers again, because I felt like that was probably our best team and we didn't get it done. I felt like that was probably our best team when I was here, and we didn't get it done. We let the game get away in Boston, and then we had we went to Boston. We got a split, but we blew that second game, and then we came home, and Verlander got beat 1-0 on Napoli's home run, and I think that was a game that kind of put the top on the box for us, because we still had a chance. But if we'd have won that first game at home, I think we could have turned that around from the disappointment of blowing that game in Boston, and I think that was the game. But that team was really good, really good.
You can feel as a manager the top kind of going on the box.
Yeah, you can feel sometimes. You hate to say this sometimes because you don't want fans to misunderstand what you're talking about. But I lost a game one time in Philadelphia, winning 10-0 after 2 innings, and I told the coaches in the 5th inning, "We're going to lose this game."
Really?
You could feel it, and sure enough, some little second baseman never hit a 3-run homer. 2 innings later, the same little guy hit another 2-run homer. We got beat like 11-10 or something. But you could feel it, and there's nothing you can do about it. You change pitchers, you try to keep pumping them up, and there's something just telling you, oh man. But I did not feel that way in Boston. We should have won that game, and I felt that we would have won. We would.
There was 4 different pitchers in that 8th inning when Ortiz
Yeah,
hit
that
the
was
home run,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's it was just. It just wasn't in the cards. We just didn't get it done.
Yeah.
No excuses. I'm not one of those excuse guys.
But it felt like that was one of those moments that
Oh, that tore our heart out. That was
the
tough.
whole ballpark wants David Ortiz to do one thing in a 5-1 game.
Yeah.
With the bases loaded.
No
and
question
he
about it.
does it.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think, like I said, we still had a chance to recoup, and we had a great game 3 here. We had a day off and a great game 3, but we got beat 1-0. And I think that was the one that, you try everything you can to pump them up, but you can see the disappointment, and there's a little bit of energy that's lost or a little bit of edge that's lost. And I'm not ashamed of talking about that. It happens, and sometimes you can't do anything about it, but you just try to stay on top of them and do the best you can with it.
That's so fascinating to me that you can feel it.
Yeah.
Where do you see it? Like the eyes, the body
Well,
language?
you can just feel the pulse of the game. And if you watch things in the older days, pitchers don't pitch as much starters now. But this sounds crazy. But if you watch over the history of the game, certain pitchers get to a 5th inning with a lead. Not a big lead, but a nice little lead. But they know if they get through 5, they're going to win that game. And all of a sudden, they look a little bit different. They're trying to get the out before they throw the pitch. They're trying to get this over with. I want to get this over with and get the win. You can see it. And I used to tell the guys in the dugout, certain pitchers, I won't mention names, but I said, listen, this guy can't do this. He's going to struggle this inning. Stay after him. We're going to get him. He's going to give it up. I said, I'll promise you he's going to give it up. Just stay with it. Stay with this game, And a lot of times, and not that you were smart,
Right.
but you could
see
feel
it.
it. Yeah.
I do want to know where your fashion sense comes from, because the tie at the Hall of Fame was like 11 out of 10, and then we got the blue sport coat with it's great.
Jason, I'm going to tell you what happened about that whole thing. That suit was a little bright, and it was a linen suit. My daughter works for Ralph Lauren, and I picked it out, and then she picked the linen part. But I'll tell you what happened. I said, I'm going to be 80 years old. And when I go up there to the Hall of Fame, I don't want to look like, and I don't mean this wrong, so I hope nobody takes it wrong, I don't want to look like a funeral director with a dark suit and a dark tie. I don't want to do that. I need to have a little bit of pizzazz. I don't want to look, the old blue blazer and gray slacks. I don't want to do that. So my daughter actually picked out the tie, and they sent it, and I loved it, and it was a little much for me. I understand that, but like I said, I didn't want to look like an old man, even though I'm an old man. I didn't want to look like an old man.
But it's perfect for what you were describing as a manager, right? Like you said, you're a little goofy.
No
and you said
question.
sometimes you like to,
Right.
kind of change the eye level of the person you're talking to.
No question.
It's a perfect tie for you.
Yeah, I love that tie. I love it. My daughter said, put it back in the box. I said, I put it back in the box real nice. I'll wear it again. I don't know when. Katie will probably put me in a box in it, but that's all right. Yeah, but that's okay. But I did. That's who I felt. I wanted to have a little pizzazz. Not that you're, and I guess maybe you're trying to draw attention to yourself. I don't know, but it wasn't in a bad way. I didn't mean it in a bad way, but I wanted to look like, hey, oh boy, I hate that suit or I love that suit, one way or the other. Some people probably liked it, some didn't, but I felt that way about it. So I did it.
Were you like that as a kid? Did you try to add a little pizzazz to everything?
The what?
Did you try to add a little pizzazz to everything in Perisburg?
No.
What were you like as a kid on the baseball diamond?
Just a competitor. I loved it. I played hard all the time. I thought that's what one thing that it's kind of a pet peeve of mine sometimes is when they say, well, this guy, he's not great, but this guy really plays hard. To me, that's a given. You're supposed to play hard. You're not supposed to get a medal for playing hard. I'm sorry. This great game, and you get a chance to play this game every day. And I know guys get tired, and I understand all that. And we give a day off or whatever it may be, but you don't get a medal for playing hard. You get a medal for playing hard and playing good.
Your time in Detroit, what was it, do you think, that connected you to this city and made you such a fan favorite? And fans took you into their heart, and you always reciprocated in terms of you would talk about the fans and what they meant to you.
I think the fact that they knew that, I worked in a factory in the off season. I carried hod in the off season. I related to a lot of people that work hard every day, and I can't tell you. And a lot of people say, "Oh, this guy's just talking." Listen, when somebody gets up in the middle of the winter with the ice all over their windshield and everything, and goes to work and trying to support their family and everything, that was us. That was my dad. You know, so I relate to that. These people work hard, and to think that they get home and rush their supper down, or get a hot dog or something at the stadium, and bring their kids out to the game and spend their hard-earned money with you, how can you not appreciate those people? I mean, they're special. That's the way it is. I'm sorry. That's the way it is.
And I know you didn't love all your interactions with fans, but I love how you interacted with fans. Sometimes you would get the mail bins of 2 months of mail, and you would diligently go through and answer. But you would call some people, wouldn't you? If they'd either second-guessed a move you made, or if you'd be out on the town or having a drink at an establishment, people would come up to you and ask you about a decision that you made or a strategy move that you made, and you would always explain it to them.
This is the way I handled that. I said, listen, you want to know why I bunted or why I didn't bunt or something? I'm going to explain it to you, but after I explain it to you, I want you to accept my explanation. You don't have to believe my explanation. You can disagree with it, but I'm not going to get into an argument with you. I'll tell you why I did it, and then you can decide yourself whether you agree or disagree. But I'm not going to sit here and argue about it. You know. I used to get well, you know, on your show, I used to get some ugly mail, like if Cabrera didn't play on a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
So I figured it out over the time, because the fans sometimes don't realize you are conscientious of them. So like on Monday or Tuesday, if I knew I was giving Cabrera off on Sunday, I'd say it on my radio show so they could get another ticket for another game. So you do think about them. They might not think you do, but you do. And I understood that. So I'm bringing my son to one game this year to see Miguel Cabrera. You didn't play him. You're the biggest jerk, you know. Okay, you know, one guy got on me. He said, then he wrote me back a letter. He said, I'm so sorry. My dog died that day. I said, okay. I'm sorry. I called him up. I said, I'm sorry about your dog, you know. But I always believed this, and I believe this to this day. And some managers don't, some managers do. But I believe this. I believe that I wanted to get every bit of information that I was allowed to get out to the Tiger fans, because I think it brings the fans to where they feel more part of the team. They feel like they get to know the manager and the players a little bit more if you give them information. All this secret stuff all the time is no good, unless you're making a trade and you have to keep your mouth sealed, which you should. That's not their business. But on an everyday basis, things that are going on, I think it's good to relay that information out to the fans and let them digest it, and see however they react to it is fine. That's up to them.
Jim, before we let you go, what can baseball do for the world?
Oh, boy. It can do so much. I mean, there's so much hope for our game. Our game is great. I think sometimes you have to slow down a little bit on the changes, because I think you don't want to overdo it with people, and it's been such a great game for so long. So I think it's a little tricky there to not go too far, but it's about, I can sum that up pretty good. What it does for the world is, one time, I won't say who the player was, the team, but he called us little leaguers, called me a little leaguer. And my answer to that was, listen, buddy, every October and November, I see people jumping up down on a pitcher's mound that look like a bunch of little leaguers at Williamsport. So I'm not ashamed of that. That's what the big boys are doing when they win the World Series. They're acting like those same little leaguers that are at Williamsport. So there's nothing wrong with being a little leaguer at heart.
That's awesome.
That is. And that's what baseball can do for the world. I love that. Thank you so much.
Oh, great being on with you guys. Continued good work with you guys. I listen to you, not you, but I see Jason on TV. I don't get the radio, but you've done it. I know how you do it. It's great, and I really enjoy listening to you. It's terrific.
Thank you, Jim.
We love having you as part of this organization, Stu, which I think is special. And I just leave with this quote, because I think it's, of all the quotes I saw, it's like the perfect quote for you, from Max Scherzer. He was asked to tell stories. So I'm not sure I can tell too many stories about Jim. But he said he made it fun to come to the ballpark every day.
Well, that's what I said. I wanted to make the clubhouse a fun place to come, but a great place to work. There's a separation there.
Yep.
So that's what I tried to do.
Thank you, Jim.
And thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.